Yeah, and it's a very noble thing to be doing, to be involved in that. Um, but there's another side though, and I don't personally, I don't know what the best way is. I know what I don't like, right? And keeping everybody happy all the time is impossible. So I mean, it's just not something that we should ever be trying to do. Um, yeah, so I don't agree with the complete segregation, and yet here's some things that people don't talk about. People don't talk about the IQ drop, that average intelligence and IQ in graduated 18-year-old students in British schools has dropped 10 points in the last 30 years.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's an IQ drop of 10 points on average in society.
Mhm.
And the question is that if education is improving, why is IQ dropped on average 10 points? Nobody wants to ask the question. Nobody wants to answer the question, but it's there because the question is not polite and the answer is not appropriate. Yeah, and the analogy for this is connected with sports. Yeah, where everybody knows what the Tour de France is. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, everyone knows a famous cycle race, and in the Tour de France you have teams, and you have a team of cyclists, and your cyclists all cycle together, and your team can only travel as fast as the slowest cyclist in your team.
Mhm.
The team can never travel any faster.
Mhm.
And that is part, it's not the whole story, but that's part of what is happening uh, within the British system. Is that is that is that we want to take everybody from using my hands because I can't describe it with words. We want to take everybody from here to here. But if we can only get people from here to here, it requires that we take people from here and bring them here. And this is something that happens innately and naturally. If let's take a crazy example, but it's an example that everybody understands. Let's take an intelligent person talking to a stupid person. Now, this automatically assumes that the intelligent person is not stupid and the stupid person is not intelligent, which is almost impossible to prove because, um, you know, everybody's got a different kind of intelligence, right? So maybe and intelligence changes depending upon where you are. Like if you're working in the financial district of London, your intelligence is different from if you are a goat farmer in the Himalayas, right? Neither set of scale with neither set of skills will you survive in the other environment. So your intelligence is completely environmental. Um, however, a stupid person cannot communicate with an intellectual person on an intellectual level. However, an intellectual person can communicate with a stupid person on a stupid level. Uh, and so this is something that we haven't solved yet. Yeah, we can lift one up, or we can try to lift one up, but how far can we take a person, and how much can we do? It's also understood in terms of football. Now, personally, I don't like football. I think it's a ridiculous idea to run around a park chasing a ball and get paid for it. You know, if we pay footballers more than we pay teachers, then society is completely messed up, and it's just completely stupid. It's when we pay the entertainers. Football is entertainment, really.
Mhm.
When we pay the entertainers more than we pay the educators, everything is upside down, right? And uh, and yet, right, and yet the players that make the most money and the teams that go to the top are when the best work with the best, right? If you can't play well enough, then you're put in a team where your abilities are appropriate to that specific team. You don't put the worst with the best. Now, this doesn't mean that the best shouldn't experience the worst and the worst shouldn't experience the best, because You know, if you don't taste a luxury every now and then, you have no idea what a luxury is, right? And you have no idea that there's a whole other world out there. So so that balance is something that I don't think we've solved in education yet, where as much as we want to be inclusive, you can't put the wheelchaired basketball player in the NBA, right? They got to play in the wheelchaired basketball league, right? So there are obvious limitations, both physically and mentally, that people face. Although how we're going to solve that in the problem, I don't know. Maybe your work is going to come to some conclusion that that brings us closer to solving that problem. But I think we're still a couple of thousand years away from finding a way to naturally include everybody in a way in which their skills are appreciated. Where the best person for the job is the best person for the job. Doesn't matter if they're tall, short, fat, thin, male, female, green, pink, purple, whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. I think that Slovak people have a far greater perspective on this problem than people in other countries, because there are so many diverse cultural aspects in Slovakia that bring challenges into people's everyday life that don't happen so much in other countries. You know, the obvious example would be some gypsy stumbling drunk around the center of some town somewhere in Slovakia. There's obviously a culturally inappropriate problem that has to be dealt with on that respect. And understanding strengths and weaknesses is a really complex cognitive aspect of human development, because first of all, we very often need an external perspective on that. We can't see it ourselves. We need to be objective, not subjective. And secondly, education orientates us towards our strengths, not our weaknesses, because we're given credit for what we're good at, not what we're not good at. And that's changing, because, you know, we're now giving people, you know, grades for effort and progress and improvement. And we're understanding more emotional aspects of education. And we understand this on a personal level. You know, you don't ask your best friend for their school qualifications, right? I mean, that would be stupid, right? So you know, we you know, when we meet our partner for life, we judge them on how intellectually we think they are based on our experience, but we don't look at their school reports, right? So we don't make that personal. And if, you know, in our families, you know, we don't look at the school reports of our parents, and we don't worry too much if our children are not performing in certain areas, because we know there are kids, right? And hopefully we're working on their skills anyway as parents. So I think that the Slovak system, this is how I've explained it before to teachers. The Slovak system works like a tree. Yeah, as you get older, you're forced to branch out into different subjects and categories, and you can, and you have a perspective of the branches of the tree. It seems to me to be it's more complicated, but it's more organic, as you know, biological things are often complicated. And the British system functions basically like a pyramid, where as you get older, you study less subjects. It was 12, 8, 5, 3, maybe 1 or 2, which creates psychological compartmentalization, which means that you become an expert on something, and get employed for that something, but outside of that something, it's very difficult to function. And the classic example of this in the modern world is if you take somebody from department A in their office or company and put them in department B, they can't function because they don't know what to do, because they don't have that greater awareness and understanding of the skills necessary outside of what it is that they've learned to get to the top of the pyramid. And you're given credits, you're given more and more and more and more credits, socially, economically, etc., as you narrow towards the top there. And I always thought that the Slovak system was harder and more challenging, and as a result, produced students with a greater awareness of the world because of those challenges that existed there. I think that I can see the value in that when, if you look at the history of, say, Czechoslovak engineering, right, where Czechoslovakia produced a lot of engineers in comparison, but you know, so did Germany and Austria. But if you compare it to sort of France and Spain and Britain, Czech Republic and Slovakia produced, say, more on that technical level. Whether or not it's about the application of the knowledge, I'm not sure. It might be opportunity that's limiting people. It might also be confidence, the right kind of confidence. What do I mean by that? Personalities are different in different countries, right? I mean, that's why languages exist, right? Because it's an expression of personality. And yeah, Slovak people might be confident to go to a cottage in the countryside and cook sausages and make their own slivovica or something, right? That's a bizarre example, but it might be a cultural knowledge base that gets passed down generation to generation. They might not have the cultural confidence to understand what would be a so-called democratic free market in terms of economics, which would be a different approach to things. And that might be inherited through the communist cultural history where everybody was a nail and the state was a hammer, just saying, okay, you know, just stand up like this and we'll knock you down. And it was very hard socio-psychologically for people to evolve and develop in that kind of system. And there's still a cultural hangover from that, and it's not all bad, right? I mean, no system is all bad. You can argue that anything is good, right? Yeah, you can argue, you can find a semi-intellectual argument for almost anything at all. So that there were positive arguments for certain systems being better than certain other systems, and you know that the need to understand both is important. But it's the application of the knowledge, I think, is what is key. And in order to apply knowledge, you need the opportunity to apply knowledge. It's not just the application, it's the opportunity. And I think certain of those opportunities maybe did not exist in the past, but all I can say from my personal experience is not everything is what it seems. Having run a business in Britain and a business in Slovakia, I would say that for as much as I was frustrated by certain systems in Slovakia, there were many, in other areas, there were many more freedoms in Slovakia that existed in Britain. Neither system was better. Both systems have their challenges and their problems. Neither one stood out to be greatly different from any other one. And and there's lots of different reasons for that. You can't. It's sometimes it's like comparing apples and oranges, right? Britain is an island. Yeah, surrounded by water, as islands always are. It's often called the sceptered isle, culturally in history, which means the disassociated
Mhm.
island, not connected to anything at all.
Mhm.
And Slovakia is a landlocked country with all of the pressures from the greater countries surrounding it. You know, Poland, Ukraine, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Austria, and you know, you can argue that the existence of Slovakia itself is quite contradictory. Historically, you know, there's a strong argument for the fact Slovakia should not exist at all. Sort of, if you look at it historically, it's very, it's a very big topic, but we won't go there. But yeah, the level of technical knowledge is generally quite high in Slovakia. The opportunity to apply that is related, I think, to economic confidence, being able to having a free-minded spirit in terms of I can develop a business and I can try to do something and I can be independent with it, which perhaps hasn't existed so much in the past due to very strong state controls of every kind of institution, and the fact you need 100 bits of paper and 100 stamps and 100 signatures, and everybody knows that the system is completely corrupt from the top to the bottom. It is very, very easy to buy a qualification in Slovakia.
Mhm.
You can buy anything, right? You know, anything, right? If you ask the right person in the right place. It's absolutely, totally, completely corrupt from the top to the bottom in every institution, in every corner, not in every person, but